When the lights go out, we're the last ones standing.
Guys, welcome back. It is me, Bushcraft Family, with another video. And yes, it's another prepping video. Or it could just be, you know, for those people who want to prepare for a disaster of some sort. You know, well, the things that happen when a bad situation happens and you go to the store and it's all sold out. And by that time, it's too late if you actually need it, type of thing. And usually within 48 hours, shelves are clear. During COVID, you know, I think everybody thought they were going to have to go to the bathroom 50 times a day or something because you couldn't find a roll of toilet paper. Everybody bought roll of toilet paper. They bought baby wipes and Lysol. And they forgot about food and all that stuff. But that is some of the things that, you know, people think of. And I guess that's about all I'm going to say on that. But you would be surprised what triggers this panic buying. And it's best to have these things beforehand, you know. First thing on the list is potassium iodide. I'm not saying that, you know, nukes and EMPs are coming or anything like that, because you know those YouTubers are out there. They've been calling for World War III since YouTube, I guess. One of these days they'll be right. If they're still around by then. But whenever there is a scare, even when a reactor, warnings of a reactor is going off and stuff like that. In Japan, Fukushima or whatever it was called, there was a lot of warning that the cloud was going to make it all the way from Japan to the West Coast. And the K1 tablets, potassium iodine, were sold out. You couldn't get them anywhere. People were almost selling them on the black market, so to speak, for higher prices and whatnot. And again, it's too late then. I'm not saying this is what you need to get and stuff like that, you know. It's better to have it than not need it, than need it and not have it, so to speak. Okay, our next one we're going with canning lids and rings. And you got to count the jars in there if you don't have the jars. But again, during COVID, you couldn't find them on the shelves, the lids and the rings. I have since partnered with a company, Superb, that makes the best lids money can buy. They're made here in the United States with American steel, not recycled stuff from India that Ball does. But if you go down below, actually, I'll have a code where you can get 25% off your order. I have to remember to put that in there because we just got new codes for 25% off. Again, let's get back to the video. When you need it, you got to have it. You know, those of us that have gardens, if you go to put something in and you don't have the tools to can, your harvest goes to waste because you can't eat it in time. So it's best to have a good stock of this stuff ahead of time instead of when it's too late. Our next thing is antibiotics. There's many forms. I'm not going to go over the forms of these things. I remember during a couple things that happened. Tractor Supply, Roll King, those places were hit very hard. And if you know that their stuff is for animals, just saying. But there is other forms of antibiotics. There's herbal. So it's best to have a supply of that stuff before it's too late. Next thing here is, everybody should have this stuff, but axes, hatchets, and draw knives, woodworking type of tools. These little things right here are amazing. If you know what it is, you know what it is. This special made tool takes a bit like this, and it has the same hole here as the bit. So you put a stick in there and turn it around and make holes where you can make pins for those holes by joining wooden things together. There's all kinds of little tools and gadgets that you can use that would make building things a lot easier. And you'd be surprised during certain times, these hatchets and, draw knives and things like that, woodworking things, were nowhere to be found in these department stores and things. Our next thing is bulk propane and propane adapters. Yes, the adapters are very hard to come by sometimes. And depending on the season, like thunderstorms, tornadoes, and stuff, these things are hard to find sometimes, especially the adapters, to go on one tank or the other, or to fill up other tanks and things like that. So again, it is good to have backups and backups of that backup. Say you have this adapter and the only way you can run your stove, you need this adapter, and you go and install this adapter and it doesn't work. It's a bad adapter. If you have a backup, you're good to go. Our next thing is grain, salts, and cooking fats, lard, tallow, that kind of thing. Certain times it is very, very hard to get. During COVID, probably year in, a lot of that stuff was very hard to find, unless you get the icky synthetic stuff, but we won't get into that. But grains and salt were very, very hard to get. Sugar was very hard to get. There was very little on the shelves. But everybody forgets, that was just 5 years ago. Coconut oil, ghee, you can make your own. There's so much of that stuff. Butter, I'm just now getting into where I had to go buy butter because I put it in the freezer, and I'm just now using it up from back then. Another thing here on the list, we did propane, so we might as well do gasoline. Gasoline with the stabilizer, not just gasoline, because gasoline lasts 3 months and then it degrades rapidly from that. And depends what it is. If it's ethanol, it's even worse. Becomes very unstable. ethanol breaks down into a water or a vapor, and it makes it unusable. So having stabilizers to prolong your gas could be a lifesaver. Another thing, everybody has their fancy cookware that comes from Food Network or whatever, from those cooks we all watch on TV. They all have their lines, and majority of the cookware is made out of aluminum. So if you have to start cooking on the fire outside, aluminum at a certain temperature releases a gas that can be very toxic, and you don't want that in your food. So the best thing is cast iron. So everybody should have cast iron cookware, a good Dutch oven with a lid, so you can use a lid on top of it. You can bake with it, Also, a good cast iron skillet does wonders on an open fire. You don't have to worry about nothing. And yes, I'm going to say it, water filtration and purification. There's all different forms. There's, different generators to generate water. And, there's the pills that, I still know people that have bought those pills from 10, 20 years ago and would stake those pills on their life. Guess what? They have an expiration date. Also, I've got 20 gallons of bleach in my basement stored in case I need it to purify my water. Bleach has an expiration date. Do your research, people. Do your research. That's all I'm going to say. Our next one is over-the-counter pain and fever medication. During COVID, ibuprofen, Tylenol, children's, the liquid stuff, aspirin, all gone. People binged that stuff in case they needed it. They bought 4 or 5 boxes, like they would ever use that many. But there was none to be found. And those people that actually needed it was nowhere to be found because they didn't have it on hand. And again, that stuff has expiration. I'm not saying you can't use something that is a little bit older, because you can, And those who have heart conditioner or have to take aspirin for blood thinner type thing, they had to go without. Stuff to think about, and always rotate. And our last one is garden seeds. I had to put this in here because, again, during COVID, that first growing season, no seeds, cheap seeds, whatever. And I would suggest getting some good seeds that will produce other good seeds, heirloom. That way there's no trouble or anything in that. But that is something that we need to think about, how to keep those seeds for a long period of time. And remember, write it down, have everybody has those cell phone things, put a warning, or alarm saying, time to rotate your garden seeds, time to rotate your canned goods or whatever. Set alarms for that stuff, or just mark it down somewhere. Have a calendar saying information, and then mark it in red saying, hey, this is the day we need to rotate. But that's all we have for today. Like always, God bless.